Aloha and welcome. In this very short lesson, we're going to be talking about memory allocation and garbage collection. So when we're talking about memory allocation, we're talking about the process by which an application requests and is granted memory to use. So in Python, you've got something called the Python runtime, and that does the handling of almost all of this for you. So your memory is it's allocated, its access to memory is granted by the operating system. So your Python runtime is going to make a request to the operating system to get that memory, and it'll do that in the background. You're not going to be, you're not going to have to worry about the details of it, the implementation of it. That happens invisibly in the background. The Python runtime is going to request from the OS, and the OS will grant it usually to the Python runtime. Only when things go horribly wrong are you going to see an error with a memory issue. But most people don't come across that unless they're unless they're doing something very resource intensive. So don't worry about that so much. As I said, the OS can grant or deny the request. All that happens in the background. You don't have to worry about it. And then the opposite of this process. So as you are granted and allocate memory, as you're doing things like creating lists or dictionaries and things like that, you've got a variable that references that object in memory. So one by one, as these variables no longer reference it, if you get to a point where nothing is referencing that anymore, that is a candidate for being deallocated, what we call with garbage collection. Garbage collection is the process by which we remove memory, or we unallocate, deallocate memory that's been allocated for use. So once we have this thing called a reference count. So a reference count is it's an integer essentially that counts the number of references to an object. And once that reference count hits 0, it means that that thing is no longer being used. It's no longer being referenced, so we can throw it away if we need to. That does not mean that as soon as it hits 0, it's going to be the garbage collector is going to hit and it's going to throw it out. It doesn't mean that. It just means that it's a candidate for being thrown out and freeing up memory. And the runtime in the background, it will free up memory when it needs to. So it could be seconds, it could be minutes between no references to it and actually being thrown out. So keep that in mind. So your Python runtime is handling the allocation of memory. You're requesting it from the operating system, or being granted or denied, and it's also doing the cleanup on the back end. So once nobody is referencing these variables, or once the variables are no longer referencing objects in memory, it can clean that up, and it'll do that in an efficient way whenever it needs to. So this is a really simple section. This is stuff that happens in the background. You're really not going to have to worry about it that much. The only time it ever comes to mind is when things go horribly wrong. And that's going to be when you're using up too much memory. Let's say you try to load something extremely massive from a file and it eats up all the memory that you can use on your system, then you'll probably come across some kind of a memory allocation error. But yeah, unless things go horribly wrong, that is not going to happen to you because you're a good programmer, right? Exactly. So that's it for this lesson. That's it actually for this chapter. So if you have any questions about classes or anything else, feel free to reach out to me, send me an email, set up a Zoom chat session. I can look at code that you have or something like that. Just let me know. And I will see you in the next chapter.